Very last problem, we are going to use factoring to help graph a quadratic function, right? So we know f of x is y, right? Y equals. We know that it's a is 1, right? B is -2, and C is -8. A, B, C. A is 1, B is -2, C is -8. Because A is positive 1, we know our graph's going to open up. We already practiced finding vertex and all of that before, but we're going to use factoring to see if we can find, right, x-intercepts. So that's why we would use factoring in this case for today's purpose. So to find x-intercepts, we put 0 in for y. Oops. So 0 equals x squared minus 2x minus 8. So put 0 in for y, so that all you have is x. All terms are on one side. Let's see if we can factor. What multiplies to a times c, so it multiplies to 1 times -8, or -8. That adds to -2. So we have 4 and 2. We know the 4 has to be negative because they add to -2. So our factors are x minus 4, x plus 2. For those of you also who aren't confident still with factoring, remember you could take the time and FOIL this distribute and make sure it is x squared minus 2x minus 8 when you simplify, and then you factored correctly. Okay, so our factors are equal to 0. It's okay if I put the equal 0 on the left or on the right. It's just my factors, my parentheses on one side, then the zeros on the other. So then I set each factor equal to 0, like we've been doing for the other problems. So anywhere that we see an x, right, if we had a GCF with x, like a value in front, we'd also set that to 0. So we add 4 to both sides, and we get x is 4. If we subtract 2, we get x is -2. So we have 2 x-intercepts. This parabola is going to touch our graph at x is -2. We put that there. And at x is 4. And for sake of today, we're just drawing a rough sketch. But I also know that if it's in standard form, right, we know that there's a y-intercept. Just have more points to quickly draw. We know there's a y-intercept in standard form at 0c, right? So in this case, our c value is -8. So we know this graph's going to touch the y-axis at -8. So I'm going to do a little dot there too. Now that's not the vertex, but we know that's a piece of our graph. So now I'm going to draw a U-shape. For sake of practicing though, let's see if we can find the vertex. So our vertex would be, the x-coordinate of our vertex is -b, right? Oops, over 2 times a, so 2 times 1. So on top we have +2 over 2, which is 1. And then if we plug that into our equation wherever we see x, we would get 1 squared minus 2 times 1 minus 8. So let's see, we get order of operations. 1 squared is 1, minus 2, minus 8. So we know 1 minus 2 is -1, minus 8 is -9. So for this problem, we know our vertex, if we were told to do that, could be found -b over 2a, plug that in to get y, so we have 1 comma -9 would be the vertex for this graph. And it looks like that's pretty spot on. Okay, but again, the purpose of today is to practice factoring, plug 0 in for a y to find the x-intercepts if they exist for the graph. Okay, last one. So number 12. So for number 12, we're going to do the same thing, use factoring to graph. So I know that this is y equals, but I want to find x-intercepts. So I'm going to plug 0 in for y, so that all I'm left with is x. 0 is on one side, x on the other. Simplified, we're going to try to factor. There's no GCF. A is 2, B is 5, and C is -3. we have to look for a combo that multiplies to a times c. So what multiplies to -6? That adds to +5. So we know it's, let's see, it could be 2 and 3, 1 and 6. It has to be 1 and 6, because only one can be negative. And -1 times 6 is -6, and -1 plus 6 is +5. So those are our factors. So we have 0 equals x minus 1 times x plus 6. And if we set each factor equal to 0 and solve, we would get x minus 1 equals 0, x plus 6 equals 0, and when we add 1, we get x is 1. So that's going to be one of our x-intercepts, and x is -6. So those are going to be our x-intercepts. So we're going to have dots at 1 and at -6. And we know because a is positive, it's going to open up. We know that the y-intercept is at 0c, or 0, -3. And that's all that it's asking for. It didn't ask us to find the vertex. It was really just focusing on the x-intercepts for today. So we were focusing in on factoring to find where we're going to touch across the x-axis, and we're going to do that at x value of 1 right here and x value of -6. The one above, when we factored set to 0, we focused in on this x value of 4, x value of -2. So it's just something else that helps us when we're drawing these graphs.